down. So, welcome back. Representative Elder, would you take that door, please?
Yes, I will.
And we're here to hear an explanation of the amendment that is in the calendar today. So I think we'll start with Representative Toof, and then we'll have Damien do whatever Damien needs to do after that.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Representative Casey Toof. I represent St. Albans. I'm on House Education, and I'm here for an amendment to H66. I don't know how in depth you want me to go. I know Ledge Council's here, but
Well, it's a pretty lengthy amendment.
Yeah.
So
and it does do a lot to change the bill. So
yes, and just before you start, I'll share with you what I talked to the clerk this morning. And so the process today on this particular bill, unless it changes from the time I talked to the clerk, we get to this sometime this afternoon.
Yep.
Is that Representative Chestnut Tangeman is the reporter of the bill. He'll report the bill for us. Representative Demro, who was in here yesterday from Ways and Means, will do the report on their amendment to the bill. Appropriations will then do their instances of amendment. And then we will vote on the bill, right? Then we'll vote backwards, right? So then we'll go, appropriations is going to amend the Ways and Means is going to amend general and housing. Then we're going to have a bill. This is essentially going to work as before third reading.
Yeah.
Kind of situation, even though it's today. So then we'll return to this amendment because the way the clerk explained this, then correct me if I'm misrepresenting this at all, is that those three amendments go together to create the bill that we're seeking to create. But this amendment is a very substantial change to the program.
And I believe, and I thank you for that because it's going to get really mixed up with all these different amendments to it.
Yes.
And I believe the way it's been written has been reflected on the changes that have been on the amendments from Appropriations and Ways and Means as well.
Okay.
So
this would be essentially, this is responding then to what it would look like once those other two amendments that we made.
So the votes will come first and then we'll do the amendment after. That's good.
Correct. So that's just for all of us to know that when we're on the floor, and again, there's a plenty of bills, and there's going to be plenty of confusing stuff on the floor, and this was one of them, and I just wanted to make sure we, to the best of our knowledge, at least as before 9 o'clock this morning, that was the routine that I was told would happen.
And it'll only change a couple of times.
Yes.
So, and that's the long way to your question. If you want to give an overview of what you're trying to do here and then let the attorney go through it line by line, that would be sufficient.
All right. And he can correct anything that I get wrong in my explanation as well. So thank you again for having me. I really appreciate your time on this. This is basically going to do three things. It's going to administer by an insurer. So it's going to go to like a third party insurance company. There's going to be an employer contribution so the employers can opt in to pay, and there's also an employee opt out. So there are 9 instances of amendment.
So that makes it voluntary. It makes third party voluntary times 2.
Yes.
Right, voluntary by both employer and employee.
Okay. And the reason, I'll just give a reason for it. I'm really worried about the cost. I've seen a few estimates. I've read 7 days. I've seen the bill. And my understanding is it can be pretty costly. So that's why I want an opt-in option. And having the 50 new positions in the treasurer's office, 15 new positions in the tax department. I kind of want to go away from having a self-administered one and going to a third party that knows how to do it. I know there are our neighbors in New York, they run a partnership with private insurance companies. I know that I was reading an article, and if I may talk about an article I read, I don't know if you've seen it. I have it, right here. It was in US News, Washington's paid family leave program. Being short on cash, they're about $8.7 million in deficit. And they run a little bit higher at 8.8% of their payroll tax. So I'm just worried if the 0.55 is going to be enough for us to cover the cost. So that's why I wanted to introduce this amendment. And I'll just do it really quick and then let council if he wants to go over it. But there's 9 instances of amendment. The first one creates a director to administer the program. The second, the employer is responsible for deducting the contributions. The third instance of amendment, the employer shall not withhold if someone opts out. Fourth instance, no additional restrictions, and there's a 2-week opt-in or out period during the year, or no longer than 2 weeks, or longer or
At least
less,
2 weeks.
at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I just want to, yeah. Fifth instance, employee opt-out, that's the big part. The big language is a huge part in the bill for the opting out. The sixth instance is just, sixth, seventh, and eighth instance is adding the word enrolled before the word employee. It just covers the language there. And then I believe the ninth instance is like definition of enrolled employee. So I can answer any questions, or if you want him to go over it.
Representative Burrows.
So just to be clear, because I haven't read it, there's only one window of time in which you could opt in or out.
Yeah, and I believe that's,
It's like an annual enrollment.
it's an annual enrollment. I believe that's pretty standard for insurance.
Right. Yeah, it's based on your annual enrollment for period for insurance with your employer. So typically, roughly every November, most employers offer their employees an opportunity to adjust their benefits for the coming year. So you could
So you opt in for the next year and then opt out for the year after.
Yes, so this is for the employer's private plan insurance. They have to give employees the option if they're requiring employees to pay it, and I'll go into the details. If employees are going to be required to pay a portion of the cost, they have to give employees the option as part of that annual opt-in, opt-out to choose not to be part of the insurance the coming year, same as you would for health insurance. So, and other employer provided benefits.
So for example, if my, I don't want to, if I knew a family member was very, very sick, I could opt in December because I know there's a chance that I'm going to need to take either family leave or bereavement leave sometime in the next year and then hop back out.
Yes, so presumably.
Can I just pause that for right now?
Yeah.
I wanna just respect the representative's
Okay,
time to go through
okay.
this and let
Okay.
Yeah.
us talk about it when Damien's going through it.
Okay,
That'd
thank you.
probably
Yep.
be good. But I'm just thinking, like, I know every November my employer always asks me to update my information to make sure that I'm opting in or staying opted in a lot of different clauses for my insurance and stuff.
Representative Bartley.
I just want to make sure. I'm assuming that like an open enrollment or when you start a new job, you would be able to opt in at the start of your new job, correct? Or do you have to wait for that specific time?
It's set up so you have to wait for that specific
Yeah.
time. So that if this amendment gets adopted, then we can tweak that going into the Senate. So,
And I know like some employers, well, at most employers, there's a waiting period too before you can get onto any benefits. So that could be something the employer would come up with within their own policies.
Representative Chestnut.
Does this have set any floor for what a private plan would need to provide?
I'm sorry, I
Does this set any floor for the benefits of what a private plan would need to provide?
don't believe
with
that,
replacement or at time period?
it's the same as what's in the bill
Yeah.
already. So the private plan still has to provide at least the same as what the state's providing. Just like what passed this committee.
Okay,
So
so yeah, it doesn't change, it didn't change anything within the bill for coverage.
Okay, I'll get into it with
Yeah.
you, I mean.
Yeah. A lot of these questions are better for,
okay.
so yeah.
Representative Parsons.
I was just curious, you had mentioned one person at the state level.
Thank you.
So in it, and he'll go over it, the director, it's one director, but then he has he or she, they have the ability to hire other people within the department. So it wouldn't just be, I believe there was like two, and three, I believe it was, that it's in the, I can find it for you. But there are specific parameters where they can hire other people. So, you know, they would be administering it, they would just be working the in-between, instead of having the 50 in this, the tax department, or the treasurer's department, 15. And then another reason that I'm worried about this is the IT. Are we gonna have more people that are gonna have to be hired for IT services and ADS, or where is that gonna come from? That's kind of why I wanted to get this out, is kind of control those costs. So there would be a couple other positions that would be open, that would be at the purview of the director and the treasurer, I believe. So the treasurer in the treasurer's department. And again, I really thank you very much for taking the time on this.
No, thank you for making the time.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good to see you, Jason.
Okay.
Could that be accessible to us, the center page?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up.
You know what? If you go to today's house calendar, it's on page 1169.
It's also it's on our page.
Yeah, it wasn't when we started, so that's why I grabbed it.
Yeah, but thank you.
Should have been.
I thought it should have been too.
Yeah, it
I got it
wasn't
from our
there.
page.
What?
I got it from our page.
Okay, so we have
Trash.
Damian Leonard here to walk us through those changes. Again, I had access to it myself on the calendar. Is where I was looking at it.
Thank you. I got it here.
Okay,
And it is on our page under Damien's name.
Got it, thank you.
there we go.
I'm gonna grab that from the printer.
Okay, for the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So the first instance of amendment, it amends the existing language that establishes the division within the Office of the Treasurer. And the main changes here from the underlying bill are first at the bottom of page 1. We've given the director authority to contract with a third-party claims administrator to administer all aspects of the benefits claim process. Then if you look down, there's a new subsection C on page 2, which requires the director to contract with a third-party claims administrator to carry out all aspects of the benefits claim process on behalf of the division, including developing, maintaining, and periodically updating a claimant portal and application forms, reviewing benefits claims and making determinations, paying benefits to qualified individuals, and providing a process for the initial appeals related to benefits determinations. So this doesn't take away the tax collection piece of the bill, which is able to be added as a module to our state's tax IT system relatively easily without creating a new IT system. It does take away the cost of the new benefits administration system, and it would eliminate all of, particularly the FY26 positions, not necessarily. It's hard to say how many exactly, but certainly all of the positions in the Division of Family and Medical Leave related to claims administration. And I forget the exact count of those, but because we're not adding those positions anyway, it would let the division and the Department of Taxes come back in FY25 or for FY25 and 26 and say, based on the third-party claims administrator, this is what we need going forward. This is Representative Toof mentioned that in New York, there is the ability, New York's a little bit funny because they've had the New York State, they've had a state insurance authority that's provided workers' comp and disability insurance for decades, as well as private insurers. So it's an active market that the state competes in. And this is dating back decades. Connecticut uses this model where they have a state authority that contracts with a third-party claims administrator. In their case, it's AFLAC. And so they've been using this model going forward. So this is modeled, when I drafted it, I used Connecticut as the main model here for the use of the claims administrator to do all aspects of the benefits piece of this. And so that's another example where there's a public-private partnership to administer it. So that's what the first instance of amendment does. Do you have questions on that? Or do you want me to go through everything and then answer questions?
Just, I think, given that this is set up as instances of amendment, let's just do them one at a time. Any further questions for Damien on the proposal?
So I'm just, this would read, there is no state-run program which administers the interface between Vermonters.
So the state has oversight of the contract. The state does the tax collection. So that's kept with the payroll tax that way. So you're paying all your quarterly taxes as an employer together if you decide to stay in the state program. But what the state is not involved in is in the process of establishing its own benefits portal and administering claims. Instead, it's contracting that out to a third-party administrator that's going to establish and maintain the portal. So establish and maintain all the IT systems on that, and then also staff the claims process.
So payments from an employer or covered employees would be to the state, not to the.
That's right. They'd go to the state. The state would hold the funds, but the state would use the third-party claims administrator in the same way the state, for its own employees, uses Blue Cross Blue Shield for health insurance. And then I forget which company does the workers' compensation administration. The state holds the funds like a self-insured employer would, and then uses a claims administrator to actually manage the program. So that's the model here, and it's been implemented in Connecticut at this point, has modeled like this. And this is similar to what was proposed in 2019 or 2020, before COVID, the last time this was voted on. This is similar to that proposal in terms of contracting out administration. Questions? Further questions?
And this would basically, yes, I have a further question. This would
Okay.
Basically, replicate and readjust what the administration is currently working on. I'm not sure where they are in their process,
So
but
the administration's proposal is a little different because that's entirely private. So that's setting up a private marketplace using the state employees as a base for the pool. This is setting up a public program using a private claims administrator to actually administer the day-to-day claims processing. So the state collects the money and will pay the administrator, and will contract with the administrator, which could change over time depending on performance. Versus the governor's proposal, which is to bring in a private insurance company and to convince them to take the risk. They're essentially using state employees to provide a base to limit volatility in the insurance pool, and then allowing other employers to join that pool after a year. So this is sort of between the proposal that has come out of the three committees here and the governor's proposal.
right, and we'll hear that. We'll hear a little bit of that as to what Representative had mentioned, just in terms of what the benefits would be. So,
So looking at the various states that have enacted leave programs, New York has the private insurance, but mandatory participation.
Yeah, so New York the way New York has done their mandatory participation is you have to provide disability insurance originally, and now it's family and medical leave insurance. So originally it just covered an out-of-work injury that prevented you from working. it was the flip side of workers' compensation. You couldn't work because of an injury, but you weren't injured at work. So that's how it originally started. And it then grew to include other forms of family leave, caring for a family member, parental leave. And with that program, it's always been, New York has always offered a state pool that you could join. So that's run through, I think it's run through NYSERDA, but I can't remember the acronym for the entity. I think that's the right one. And then your other option is just like with regular workers' comp, buy a policy with a private insurer. So they offered a state pool to try to drive down costs in their insurance marketplace. So the state basically competes in the insurance marketplace. I don't know the extent to which employers go public or private in that marketplace. But like workers' comp, you have to cover your employees. You just get to pick, do I buy it through the state? Do I buy it through my multi-benefit plan with my insurance company?
So where I'm going with this is that with it being mandatory as opposed to an opt-in, you have a large pool to make insurance viable.
I think, so this, you could look at this as also being mandatory. Employers have to either buy into the state pool or they have to purchase a private plan. So effectively you get to the same place as New York, where they've offered a state pool against the private plans, and then people get to choose which solution fits their business. Here, employers have a state pool or they can buy a private plan, and they get to choose which is the best option for their business.
Now I'm thoroughly confused because
So
I thought this is the state pool is, or we don't, under this amendment, there would be no staff for a state to administer a state.
So what the state would be doing is outsourcing the staffing.
Okay.
So that's the difference here. So there is a state pool. The state is outsourcing the staffing when it comes to administering the claims. So when you file a claim, you're going to file a claim under this proposal through a portal that is maintained by third-party insurance company. Could be the Hartford, could be Aflac, could be MetLife, could be any one of a number of others who have experience in this sort of marketplace for insurance. It'll go through their portal, which they maintain for the state. Their staff will process the claim. Their staff will make a determination on the claim. However, if your claim is denied after the initial appeal, you get to bring that appeal in state court. You're not stuck with like an arbitration provision. So that's
existing.
And that's existing. It keeps that piece.
It's existing in this bill.
In the bill, it's existing and it's kept in here. The difference is the claims processors, the claims adjudicators, if you have a dispute, and the fraud investigation is all outsourced to whoever that company is the state hires, rather than being state employees somewhere in Montpelier or Waterbury or Barrie or wherever in the state they decide to put the office for this. So there will be a smaller staff at the state division of family and medical leave that oversees the program, but they won't be administering the day-to-day claims.
Okay. So it's still a mandatory program, but the state do private, as with our bill, our bill, you can have a private insurer or the state program. The difference is that the state outsources the program.
Right.
Essentially, administration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I saw at least 2, maybe 3 hands go up. Which ones were they? Okay, Representative Labor, then Burrows.
Damon, given that it looks like a TPA is sharing a major portion of the cost, REIT, collections, adjudications, validation of the claim, et cetera. What is the financial impact difference between this proposal and the original proposal as given to us by the modified approach this morning?
So I don't have a fiscal note to give you a precise number.
Was one requested?
I,
Do we know?
no, I don't think, typically JFO doesn't do fiscal notes for floor amendments. I know there was interest in getting some numbers, but I don't know that they had time or staff to generate rough numbers, and they typically don't for a floor amendment. They'll do it for a committee amendment.
Sure.
But floor amendments unless they pass. With the fiscal note, there's $30 million set aside for development of the claims IT system. Presumably, you're going to pay something to your third-party administrator for their IT development. I can't tell you what the difference is. And again, there are staffing costs. Presumably, there will be a difference going with a third-party administrator. I can't tell you what that difference will be. I think the idea here, and I don't want to speak for Representative Toof, but I think the idea is that by going with a third-party administrator that already does this work, the development costs for the portal and for the staffing will be lower than they would have been if the state had to stand up the program. And I think that's been the thinking behind using a third-party administrator, is that you'll get lower costs and possibly fewer, ability to stand it up quicker than if you were to go the other way, because this is something that presumably the vendor that's chosen is going to be experienced and be able to roll out something based on something they already do with a few tweaks to match up to the requirements of this program. So
Thank you.
but I'm sorry, I can't give you more specifics.
Representative Burrows?
Thank you. Thank you. I feel as though this amendment looks at this bill only as a financial bill, and we're forgetting that the other part of the bill is job security. And I wondered how in the world job security is affected by opt-in, opt-out, the ability to opt-in and opt-out each year.
So this doesn't affect the job security pieces of the bill. So the job protection stays the same. The difference is that employees who choose to opt out of the program don't have this wage replacement option open to them. They still have the right to job protected leave. They may have to take a portion of it unpaid if they choose not to pay into the program, or they'll have to use accrued paid leave or another form of insurance like short-term disability to cover the time they're away, if that's available to them.
So for any of the circumstances we listed under. Okay.
Yep, those are not changed. So safe leave, bereavement leave, qualifying exigency leave for active duty military families, and then all of the parental and family leave. You still have the right to job protected leave. What you lose if you opt out is the ability to claim benefits from this program for that leave. So it's those employees will essentially be in the same place they would be now if they had the right to job protected leave, where they'll have to find a way to pay for it out of their accrued leave or another insurance policy.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm gonna change gears here and say, Damien, if you could just get through the rest of this amendment before we ask more
Okay.
questions. That would be great.
The next instance of amendment reflects the ability for the employee to opt out. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This reflects the employer's ability to choose to deduct the full amount of the contributions from the employees. So that's a change from the underlying bill. In the underlying bill, employers can deduct not more than half the contribution amount. And this bill, employers can deduct up to the full amount of the contributions from the employees. So this allows employers to choose whether they want to share in the cost or put the full cost of the program on their employees. Questions? Oh, sorry, not supposed to stop for questions. It's a habit, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
I try to be lenient and then I have to back off.
So the third instance of amendment reflects the ability of the employees to opt out. That's where my brain was going last. So it adds this new subdivision 2, which says an employer shall not withhold or be required to remit contributions for an employee that has opted out. So the fourth instance of amendment, this adds an additional requirement for private plans in order to get approved. And that's basically that if the private plan is going to require employees to pay a portion of the premiums or costs, it must permit employees to annually elect to opt out of or re-enroll in the coverage during a specified period of not less than 2 weeks, which is often called an open enrollment period. It's important to note that this is the floor. So there was a question earlier about what about with employees starting and so forth. That's going to ultimately, under the language here, would be up to the employer and their private plan carrier, whether they want to allow employees to opt in on day one of employment, whether it's 3 months in. The bottom line is they have to provide at least an annual open enrollment period for employees to elect to opt in or out of the program. Beyond that, it's up to the employer. They could do it on a month-to-month basis if their insurer let them. I imagine that would result in much higher premiums, so that's unlikely. But they'll figure it out with their plan as long as they have this annual open enrollment period. The fifth instance of amendment covers the employee opt-out period. It requires notice for the state plan to be provided between November 1st and December 1st, and then to the program and then the director will ensure that that notice is provided to the Department of Taxes and to the employees' employers so that they know beginning on January 1, there's no longer tax contributions required for that employee. And so this is modeled on the employer opt-out provision. If you're an employer that's going to use a private plan, it's the same basic process. The difference here is the employees don't need any special approval because there's no plan to review. They're just saying, yes, I'm opting out and I understand beginning on January 1, I will no longer be eligible for benefits and I'll no longer have to pay the contributions, and then I'll have to wait a year to opt back in. So to answer some of the concerns about jumping on and off, there is the potential here, but you will be required to be on for a year. So that cushions some of it, but unlike self-employed who will have to be on for 3 years, it's just a 1 year on and off for the individual employees. The details here, like I said, they largely track the employer on and off provisions, so I'm not going to go into them too deeply just because of time. There is an initial opt-out period for calendar year 2025 for employees who don't want to pay the tax, which would begin on July 1, 2025. So they have to file by April 1 or between April 1 and May 1 of that year for the opt-out. And in order to not pay the tax. So if you know you're not going to participate in the program, you have the ability not to pay those first 6 months of taxes. And then the 6th, 7th, and 8th instances just reflect that because we are allowing employees to opt out, we now have to have a new definition for an enrolled employee. who's someone who's enrolled in the program. And so we're adding enrolled employee where it's appropriate. And then in the ninth instance, we define it as an employee for whom the Commissioner of Taxes collects contributions pursuant to the appropriate section. That went a lot quicker. So
Questions? Yes.
So I think you said this before, but I'm just confirming. This does not, the state program would still offer the same level of benefits
yep,
and the 90% wage replacement and
yep,
the different types of leave, and would require a private plan to meet those.
the same. Yep.
And so this, I assume it was in there, it gets rid of the 0.55
So the
premium.
The 0.55 initial premium is kept, the annual adjustment, which would start with calendar year 2026, starting on that January 1 is kept. So what would be anticipated with this is that if the projections, just like is happening under the current bill, if the projections in 2025 that in October, when they set the rate for the coming year, show them that they need to run the premium higher, they'll make the adjustment, and starting on January 1, that calendar quarter, the premium for the state plan will be higher. Presumably, if you have a significant number of employees opt out, you'll see your premiums go up for the state plan. But that may also be balanced if there's a cost savings from the third-party administration that could be balanced out. And I can't speak to, again, because we don't have a fiscal note, I can't speak to what exactly that would be, but I think what you see is the first instance of amendment is looking to do a public-private partnership. And again, Representative Toof, correct me if I misstate this, but the intent is to drive down the administrative costs there. And then the employee opt-out may balance out some or all of the savings that you get there, depending on what happens, but we can't predict what's going to happen.
Right, yeah, Representative.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to add to that, my concern with that is the overall cost, but also we have 800 positions, I believe, that are open to state government right now, and trying to find 50 to 65 new positions, I think would be difficult for us as a state with our workforce shortage. That's another reason why I'd like to administer it to a third party, just because I'm really worried that we won't be able to administer this with the amount of people we have.
Sure. Representative Elder.
Yeah, I mean, that is a concern I do share, and I've been open about that in here. I think it's a lot of new positions, and it's more than doubling the size of the treasurer's office, and I just some real concerns about it, the open position. This amendment goes considerably farther than just doing that. I won't support this amendment now. It's probably no great surprise, but I think the opting out is problematic. But I do want to say I understand the motivation for the third party administrator, and if that idea moves forward or gets more traction in this bill's journey ahead, I will look on that change with interest. But no, I appreciate it being brought. I think it's a good conversation. I won't support it at this time, but I think it's an important part of the conversation.
The other piece about costs, again, it creates an apples and oranges kind of way of weighing out costs here, because we took testimony from the administration. There was a broad estimate of cost because they were also tiering it differently. Just put that out there. So, whether our administrative cost or whether the cost is transferred to the employee or the enrolled, so there's still a lot of questions, a lot of moving parts. So, Further questions for Damien, on clarification of what the amendment does or says, or requests?
I think I've got it.
So our job in this is to, again, is to vote. I would, Ron, I don't know if, Ron, are you available? I don't know if you can. Representative Lamont just stepped that out. I don't know if you can just check to see if she's in the vicinity, please. Like, while we're doing straw poll, I will adhere to we're no longer allowed to hold votes open. So if someone's out of the room, they're out of the room, and I'd just like to be able to give her the opportunity to vote on this. If she's available. Yes.
I'll just say that I think this is a tenfold better starting point for the bill that we passed, in my opinion. If we were to say that, let's take this and work on it for a couple of weeks to get it actually figured out, I would thoroughly be in support of it, but it's just not quite there when I'd like to see it. But I have a lot of the same concerns you do, and share those as well. I'm not gonna say yes to something that I don't think is ready, even if I do believe it is, kind of a 180-degree thing, and that's the path I'd like to go down. It's just not all the way down that path for me, so.
I think it's a reasonable accommodation and an in-between. From an expense point of view, having dealt with TPAs before in the hospital industry, I find them much more efficient than starting up on our own. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have a cost basis to judge things on. So I don't want to see this be just an economic vote. We'd rather see a more balanced approach. This is a very reasonable approach. I think, as Representative Parsons mentioned, if within 2 or 3 weeks this could be fleshed out with more information, I think a more just and equitable vote could occur.
Okay. And I will say, from my perspective, I do appreciate the fact that this proposal, while I won't support it, is also not, I mean, it would be adopting the levels of compensation, and it would retain the job protections that the original bill is proposing. And so I think that, and when we're at this point, when the bill starts in the House, we know that it's got to go across the hall and down the stairs, and that is a whole other venture. And what we see when this bill comes back may be completely different. It may be just like this, for all we know. But that's, as you said, looking at this proposal any deeper would take some time, and we're on tap for today. As much as I would like to hold the vote open for Representative Lamont, she's not in the room right now, and I don't know where she is. And I feel like it's incumbent on us to get that vote. So this is something we may just have to check in with Representative Lamont.
Good.
But so all of those, okay, so here we are with this particular, the verbiage of a motion on this would be, what's that?
Just moderate talking out loud, never mind.
Here we go. Because if we say, if I offer the vote to be all of those in favor, please say aye, or just raise your hand. The vote would be reported as a negative. Or it's either favorable or unfavorable. That's what we're going
Favorable
to.
or unfavorable.
Define it unfavorable.
Right. So all of those, so the question is, and because it's a straw poll, do we have to do the motions? I would entertain, no, we don't have to do the motions, right? So-
Possession is not a,
So just to be clear, what I'm asking on a raise of hands, on a straw poll is all of those who, would find this amendment unfavorable, that's a yes vote? Does that make sense?
yes, we're raising our hands if we find this unfavorable, this amendment.
Yes. Is that clear? Okay. So all of those who find this amendment unfavorable, please raise your hand. Okay, and all those who find this favorable? So that's 1101. All right, please, thank you, and Representative Demeraux, you have what you need?
Yep.
Thank you. Damien, thank you. Representative Tu, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Representative Tu, just want to make sure you understand that because we don't have possession of the bill,
Yes.
straw poll rather than a formal vote.
I don't know if it's supposed to go to the other two committees or not, but
No,
yeah, okay, so,
no, that was part of the reason why we went to see the clerk this morning to
Okay.
figure out if you did have to spend your morning in 3 different committees, but
because we have enough amendments on the floor where we're looking where we're supposed to go and
yeah, no, we'll be on this till, well, at least till 9 o'clock, not on this bill necessarily, but
yeah, hopefully not.
we'll be busy today. Or we'll be sitting a lot today.
Right?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, thank you very much for your work on this morning. Again, we will convene if we have to. I wouldn't be surprised if there's requests for amendments on the floor. That can happen. But it's possible that we'll just see each other from a distance and, you know, we may, sometimes there's meetings on the floor if it's a quick amendment, you know, but again, those are just possibilities usually. But if we get any amendments, we will have to reconvene here in order to consider them.
Not too far.
And certainly that goes for tomorrow morning before third reading as well, if someone so chooses to introduce an amendment after our work on the floor today. So if there is an amendment on the floor, if there is an amendment to be heard, which we may not hear about until the calendar is published, then we would do that at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you. We can go offline.